So everyone's here. We'll do a call to order.
Yes.
All right, so we'll start the meeting. The meeting is in session.
All right. If you like, I can kind of give you an overview of what's going on with 50 Washington Street. Let's see. Let me just pull up the map. So if you've had a chance to look at the materials I sent you the other day, there's a document about Chapter 61 land and the town's policy. So the town was sent the notice of the current property owners of 50 Washington Street of their intent to sell the land to Eastland Partners. So because it's Chapter 61 land, the town has the right of first refusal. So that kind of sets a bunch of things in motion. One of them is to alert this board, as well as several other boards, including Board of Selectmen, Planning Board, and Conservation, as well as the department heads, to see if the town has a use or need or desire for this property. You're actually the first committee that's seeing this. I know Board of Selectmen's meeting shortly, and the other boards, planning boards tomorrow, conservation is Wednesday. So they'll all have the opportunity to review this property. If you want, I can kind of go through some of the maps, give you some of the information, some of the challenges that whoever decides to develop this property or acquires this property will have. Can just do that quickly. That my sloppy highlighting didn't come out very well on this PDF. So this particular map is from the town's assessing map. I think it was the town's assessing, either it was the state's assessing map, the state's GIS map. You can see my cursor. There's a lot of wetlands. Eastland Property is looking to specifically develop this kind of triangle here next to the power line easement. They own this parcel next door, 190 Washington Street. So having this triangle will help them access it. And they're also looking to possibly develop this front piece along Route 20. And we talked to Eastland Partners, myself, the town manager, the economic development coordinator. I think she was on the call last week. They indicated they might be willing to work with the town to transfer, give, sell, that remains to be seen, a portion of the property to the town. This upland portion, they don't have a whole lot of use for it this time. That would have to be negotiated. It's an unknown, but that's a possibility that I'm allowed to tell you. I will tell you, so far from town administration, we haven't had anyone confirm a real desire for it. I know the town owns a lot of land near this parcel. Let's see. All these highlighted yellow parcels the town owns. Right here is the Pappas complex, and up here is the golf course. All this property here, the small parcels are part of the Southold Road. Chapter 61, the town purchased about 4 years ago. So the town has gone through this process in the recent past. So this is the current parcel, 50 Washington Street, that's the town has the right of first refusal for. So does anybody have any questions or comments on this?
Could you make walking trails out of it?
That is a possibility. Right now, there's no walking. There was walking trails up by the Pappas complex that runs kind of down southwards. I don't know if it goes as far down as this particular parcel. That might be something that the town could use to negotiate with Eastland Partners if they're willing to, like I said, in some way transfer or sell a portion of this to the town.
And there are wetlands back there, if I understood correctly, that run through the property.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can see it on the screen here. There's a couple streams that form up and they drain into the diversion channel, which is just past the mobile home park here. So there is a lot of wetlands. So whoever owns this has that to deal with.
Yeah, I've walked that area as part of conservation for that 190 Washington Street project for Eastland, and there are some pretty dense areas, and there is some upland area if that is the part they're willing to part with. You know, it might be viable if we could connect it to the walking paths, but otherwise that downslope area where this particular parcel is pretty damp.
So, I mean, I don't know how that would impact walking trails. Obviously, you're not going to be walking in the wetlands themselves. Where exactly to connect the walking trails, I don't know. Without some kind of study or a real survey, I don't have an answer as whether this could be turned into walking trails or not. It's a possibility, but I don't have any specifics.
That upland side, I mean, if that gets joined with the other land we already own, we could probably make use of it, but short of that, I mean, we wouldn't need it to continue walking trails if we were to do something on the owned land now.
Do you know how much land they want to use for their buildings and stuff?
Approximately 8 acres. The entire parcel is approximately 30 acres.
Is that just for this one or the other land that they just purchased?
Just for this one parcel.
What is the land that it directly abuts there, that's seen in that map to the left?
Up here?
Down and to the left of this red circle.
Oh yeah, this part.
Yeah, what is that?
So right here, this is the Pappas complex. The town purchased or acquired this land back in the 60s. I'm not sure for what reason why. There is a power line, a easement that cuts across the swath of land. You can see it a bit better on this map. Oh. Bear with me, I'm at home. So.
Does some of that Pappas walking trail cut into that piece, I believe, or it comes pretty close to that?
Into Southold Road too, right?
It eventually connects. So down, I think there's some housing in there, so I don't know the exact layout, but the paths come pretty close to that property line. I think some of it is fenced off from that, and then the diversion channels all in that area.
Right, the diversion channel is right here. The walking trail, I believe, comes down somewhere along here. I don't know how far down it goes.
Adam, if I could, so right where your cursor is, the hiking trail, it extends from where the Pappas concession stand is located. It starts there, just to the right of the concession building, and goes down. There's a detention pond in the back, continues down back, goes behind the soccer field, then it goes alongside a cornfield, and then where your cursor is, if you go up a little bit, it actually cuts over into the Southold Road property. See where you see that dark green where the diversion channel is? Just above there, we cut across. There's a little footbridge there. We cut across over to the Southold Road property that we purchased about 5 years ago, and then it runs along to the north side of the diversion channel, so it's on the other side of the channel, and goes all the way to the end of the land we owned when we took the Southold Road property. And it's just shy of a mile total in length, and then you basically turn around and go back the other way. So this doesn't really connect to it. You know, my own thoughts are I think it's probably better served for the community for development, only because it does abut Route 20. probably zoned for, obviously for commercial. So DPW did not recommend that the town pursue purchasing the land, just because I think the value of the land would be rather costly, because it is probably the highest use would be commercial. And there's a lot of land. It's hard to see with this graphic, but there's a lot of land at the end of Cutting Road. I think adding those other parcels that you have on the, looking at it in gray to the left, I think those are a lot of cornfields in that area that someday would potentially be used as, potentially for recreational uses, which right now are not. But I could see, 10, 20, maybe even more years from now, extending the Pappas facility and utilize those areas that are shown in gray now. So there's quite a bit of land remaining that the town does own that we could use without necessarily acquiring this parcel, if that helps.
Bill, I'm with you 100%. If we can access the land we already have down there, if we can get some land from Eastland Partners in their development, great. But land along 20, I want that commercial development. I mean, that's our area where we want businesses going up.
I agree.
All right. I mean, you're welcome to discuss this further, but I would request you make a motion on this so you can notify the Board of Selectmen of your recommendation. What we're looking for is the board's or the committee's recommendation of to pursue the right of first refusal, or not to recommend that the Board of Selectmen pursue their right of first refusal.
So I'll make
Any land down there, is it any flat? Is it all hills?
sloped.
Yeah, it's pretty steep.
'Cause I know they were always looking for some soccer fields at one time.
Yeah, I think if the town were to develop it for that, it'd be cost prohibitive for sure, because just to bring the fill in, I think that's why a lot of that land has not been developed.
Okay, yeah.
So I'd make a motion that we not recommend pursuing it.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I
Is everyone? No opposed?
All right, I think that was everybody. So thank you. I'll draft up and send the Board of Selectmen a short memo about the committee's decision.
Yep, I'll notify in the meeting in a few minutes.
All right, thanks, Scott.
Next item on the agenda was DPW Director Bill Coyle. Adam, would you mind introducing Bill Coyle?
Sure. Bill Coyle is the DPW Director. He's the town engineer. He's been with the town 12 years, 10 years?
Yeah, 12 going on 13 now. Time flies.
Yeah. So he's very knowledgeable about the goings on of the town and the various projects that have taken place past decade plus. So it's an invaluable resource.
Thank you, Adam. So I'm not sure exactly, the committee, I'm sure will have their own questions, but I thought I would at least start out by maybe giving you a description of what exactly mainly, I guess, our Parks Department and Recreation Division, the number of employees and what we actually do and our responsibilities and what we've done over the past 10, 11 years as DPW. And then happy to answer any questions. Stop me at any time if I go on too long, because I intend to talk a lot when I'm talking about our divisions, because they do a lot. But the Parks Department and Recreation, we have a great team of employees, and they're out there constantly. You'll see them out maintaining all our fields. We have 4 full-time parks employees that work year-round, and 1 recreation director, Kristen Pappas. So the 4 parks employees typically in the summer are joined by 4 or 5 seasonal employees to maintain all our fields. And just to point out, they maintain every field in town, you know, Pappas, Lemansky, Franklin, the middle school, all the schools, Auburn Middle School, Bryn Mawr, the high school, Julia Bancroft, Mary D, the Packagug School, all the fields, all the town buildings, you know, the town hall, the library, the police station, the fire station, all of the islands in town, the Veterans Memorial Corridor. They maintain all the grass areas and you know, try to in all the landscape islands, which that in itself is very you know, enormous feat to maintain with all the mulch areas. That becomes quite significant. Fortunately, we've had some good volunteers lately to help us spread mulch in the past years. So there's quite a bit, about 75 acres total that they maintain. They also work all year long with the plowing operations as well, every year too. And again, they do a great job with that. So some of the things that we've accomplished over the past 10 years, and you're all probably aware of it, but I'll start back when we first became a DPW. We started the Pappas Recreational Facility. So that was one of our obviously major undertakings, and that project was the construction oversight happened through the town engineer's office. So myself and Joanna Paquin oversaw the construction of that project, which came out great. We're very happy with the contractor's work, and obviously that's something I think the town is very, very proud of to have in Auburn, and I think kind of the envy of the region. So that was one of our major projects. In addition, we constructed the Pappas hiking trail that goes off of the concession area that I spoke of a few minutes ago. The Southfield Road property was purchased several years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, Southfield Meadows. The Parks Department maintains that as well. We mow that twice a year, and I think there's probably, I think it's about 30 acres that they mow, and that's twice a year. They also maintain the landfill. They mow that once a year as well. The construction of the dog park, that's something that we're pretty excited about. It's over at Lemansky Park. And if you haven't been there, it's about 95% complete, and it came out beautiful. We're very excited about that. I think the town manager anticipates probably a ribbon cutting in the spring for that project. We've constructed new playground at the Pappas facility, the Tot Lot, Franklin Field. And when I first came here, the veterans parks were under construction. The Veterans Memorial Corridor was just beginning and was completed shortly, a couple of years after my arrival. And we also constructed the skateboard park, which unfortunately, the skate park at Prospect Street. Unfortunately, unless the weather cooperates, we really haven't had a lot of success with the skate park because it tends to, you know, the weather tends to either get warm and we're not able to use it. But that's right immediate to Chuck's Steakhouse. We've had a couple of good years where we've had some real deep freezes without snow, and we've been able to use the skate park. But unfortunately, that's been somewhat limited because we're very restricted, you know, based on the weather as far as how well that works. In regards to some of the open space work that we've done in terms of preserving the environment, the town has an annual aquatic weed program that we put out to bid every year, that we maintain the aquatic weeds at Eddy Pond, Leesville Pond, and Pondville Pond Dam. And I hope I'm not missing one, but I may be. And again, that's an annual program that we have. We are also.
Bill?
Yep, sure.
The Leesville Pond, is that in cooperation with Worcester? Does that work alongside Worcester?
It's primarily just the town of Auburn that we treat it. We actually own the dam that's in Worcester, which is something that we just rehabbed some of the area about a year ago. You might have saw the construction over by
Giovanni's.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Yeah. So that was just some of the areas reconstructed last year and maintained, but we own the dam, and we're also responsible for the aquatic weed maintenance on the town portion of it. I mean, obviously, you know, when you do that, I'm sure some of the overflow extends into Worcester, so I'm sure they get some benefit out of it as well. As Adam knows, we also have grants that we're working on right now with improvement of the water quality in Leesville Pond. We've also been successful in other grants as well, where we've gotten we're complete streets grants that we're pursuing, which will improve access for pedestrian and bicyclists throughout town. So there's many projects that we've worked on, I think, and you know, certainly we'll continue pursuing grants to have other improvements throughout town. And the main one I probably I should have mentioned, shame on me if I forgot, took over the maintenance and operation of the golf course. So that was also through the DPW, and that's been very successful. I know there were a lot of concerns when we first took over the operations that we would be operating in the red. And I can tell you that we are probably well over $150,000 right now in retained earnings, which is basically our savings account. So all the funds to operate the golf course completely come from the users. And I think we've done a lot of improvements. We've had a great staff up there, very successful with the golf course superintendent, Pete Corio, and his assistant, Chris Hamlin, and Kristen Pappas inside the clubhouse. So we've been very fortunate with in the success of the golf course. But I can go on with other things, but I'd probably rather have you guys ask me questions. Might be better. And hopefully I gave you some information as far as what the Parks Department does.
Bill? Mark?
Yes, Mark.
Are they going to be someday replacing the pipes under Route 20 at Camp Gleason? So maybe someday we could open up Keep Gleason?
So what Mark's referring to, and I've definitely been, that's something that's been talked about for years, Mark. In fact, I was at Mass Highway probably 25 years ago when that first came up, when the town approached Mass Highway. So I remember when I worked there, the town requested those pipes, whether or not there was something they could do. The situation that most of you may not be aware of, that Mark obviously, is the culverts under Route 20 on either side of Eddy Pond are actually, over the years, I think were designed at a lower elevation than where they currently should be, based on where the dams that were abandoned years ago used to flow over the dam on the south side of Route 20. And as dams were removed and built, this area actually went underwater on both sides of 20. So the culvert under Route 20 stays submerged all the time. So what happens is the flow under Route 20 is somewhat stagnant, and it just seeps very slowly from one side to the other. In fact, it's kind of interesting. If you drive over Route 20 and look south at Eddy Pond, you can see out in the distance, maybe 500 feet, a couple of granite blocks out there when the weather's dry. And it's the top, I believe it's the old dam that was there at one time, or remnants of it. So when if we had a heavy rain event, say 2 inches of rain one day, you drive over there and you can't see them anymore. The water elevation will actually raise probably 6 to 8 inches until over the next day or two, it slowly flows through that culvert. So the culvert doesn't flow as well as it should. We've approached the state since I've been here, and it's something where it's probably in the millions of dollars to replace. So it's not something that they see as a priority. They recognize it's probably not an ideal situation, but given the cost to replace them, I don't think they see it as a priority. So the result of that is the water at Gleason, where the Gleason building is located, it's somewhat stagnant. And so also, speaking of Gleason, we've also started the renovations of the Gleason building just recently. So we're going to completely renovate that structure from outside and inside. And hopefully that's going to be a long-term project through our facilities division. And we expect to be completed probably sometime in the fall. I think it's a complete renovation of the structure. So it's quite an undertaking.
And it will be for the DPW, a facilities building, you said?
No. It's being constructed by the DPW facilities division.
Okay.
So our carpenter, Jimmy Beauregard, and is the head carpenter on the project. So and Zach St. Jean. So we're doing that internally. We have the DPW crew out there now doing some of the demo of a portion of the building. There was a porch on the backside that's been demoed. And we'll be digging for the foundation shortly for that portion of the building. The bulk of the building that was on the old Fieldstone foundation is being retained and preserved. But with new siding, new roof, new windows, a whole new interior, we'll be gutting the whole building out. And I believe the intent through the town manager's office is that this would be used potentially for meeting space, but also for recreation purposes. For I think she had they're gonna actually have a very high-end kitchen installed through the cable access funds paying for, because I think they plan on doing programs for classes for cooking and other things. So the funds to renovate this structure are completely from the I'll probably call it the wrong name, but I'll call it the cable channel. Adam, correct me if that's wrong, but I know it's through the cable access channel. It's not through tax levy funds.
Cool.
Right.
Guys, I got to jump over to the selectmen meeting. This will be on YouTube, right, Adam? I can watch later and certify that I saw the meeting.
I believe they'll record it. I'm recording it. It's being recorded regardless, but.
Okay. All right, guys. I will see you at the next meeting.
Hi, Scott.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Since we're talking about water bodies, can you speak to the feasibility of Rotary Beach repair and cleanup, if not for swimming, then for recreational use of any kind?
I think the Rotary Beach, I mean, it is a nice location. I think it could be cleaned up and used for maybe a picnic area. I think that would be a good use for that property. I know there's always been discussions about opening it for swimming again, and there's always been some concerns about whether or not the water quality was adequate, and safety of people parking across the street and crossing Rochdale Street in that area. Kind of somewhat of a bad curve there. So I think town administration has always been hesitant to promote that to be used as a swimming area again, but I think it could be used as open space for picnic areas, so people just want to go there and have lunch. So it probably wouldn't require an extensive amount of work to do that.
Yeah, it's open up for swimming, like it used to be.
Excuse me, Mark?
It'd be nice to open up as a swimming place, like it used to be, Rotary Beach.
Yeah, I don't foresee that happening, just based on some of the concerns I've heard.
Okay, yeah, is it because it's too cloudy or something? It's too murky. Is one of the problems. They can't see bottom.
Well, I really can't speak to water quality because I'm not aware of what the results were in years past, but I know there had been some concerns. I think some of it has also been staffing, lifeguards on site, and then obviously there's liability if you don't have lifeguards and people are swimming. If somebody were to drown, where were the lifeguards? And so there's a lot of questions, and over the years I think things have changed. When I was a kid, and a lot of us used to swim in the ponds, and but I think over the years it seems more and more people have swimming pools, and maybe not as much of a demand, or they know someone has a swimming pool, or they have splash pads that they go to. But yeah, I don't see that opening as a swimming area again anytime soon.
Bill, do you know, do they use like regular salt on the Mass Pike and other Mass highways in Auburn, or do you use the stuff that you use?
Mark, I'm not sure exactly what they use. It looks to me like they are using regular salt,
Okay.
where ours is a treated salt, which is treated with magnesium chloride. So it lowers the freezing point. It's more effective than traditional salt.
Yeah, because it's with our wells and the other water areas.
Right. Certainly, looking at the Mass Turnpike 290, 395, it's always been something. I know the Auburn Water District has had many meetings and many correspondence with MassDOT, and again, we just recently had a grant where we were looking at water quality and protecting the wells and trying to make sure that if there's any spills in the turnpike that we have a means to protect the wells. As far as salt usage, I know that they've had discussions on low salt areas. And I can tell you, it looks as though to me, Route 12, sometimes I notice doesn't seem to be in as good a shape as Route 20 for a state highway. And it is designated a low salt area. So I suspect that may be why when I drive through it during a snowstorm, it doesn't seem to be as good as Route 20. I think they are trying to minimize their salt usage, but it's a catch-22. Their priority has to be the public safety of the motoring public. So when you have cars doing 60 miles an hour, you can't take a chance that your roads are iced up.
Yeah, that's true.
It is a balancing act. In terms of fields, I can say that I think I started to mention earlier that people have mentioned that they need more soccer fields or baseball fields. I think we're in pretty good shape right now. We meet with the baseball leagues, softball and soccer town leagues every year, the presidents, and make sure we accommodate their schedules for field usage before we rent out any of our fields to the private leagues, AAU and some of the men's soccer leagues. And we're able to generate some revenue from the use of those fields, in particular Pappas Field and even Lemansky Field. In the future, and again, probably 10, 20, probably close to 20 years, you might, if there was a need for additional fields, I could foresee the land at the end of Cutting Ave, which is adjacent to Pappas, the cornfields, which is town owned, would be probably a good location for expansion of fields. It's, they're cornfields, they're maintained every year. We go out to bid, and it's always the same people that win the bid to maintain them, but it's a process we go through. So it's definitely a valuable area for the town to hold on to.
Where would you envision having walkways and walking paths expanded upon, if not at the Pappas location there?
I know Adam has mentioned the railroad right-of-way off of West Street, where the new middle school is, heading over to Eastland Partners project. That might be a good candidate. You're kind of limited to how far you can go with it, I think, because there's an old bridge I think that's abandoned adjacent to the new middle school. But there is a railroad right-of-way in that area. It may extend. I haven't looked at it, haven't walked it myself, but I think there's another right-of-way, probably by Hartsgravel Road in the back. You can kind of see the remnants of the bridge on West Street right at Hartsgravel Road. I suspect the dirt bikers use it now. That area potentially could be used for trails. The other one is the Granger Cliffs. I think a few people use Granger Cliffs for hiking trails as well. That is town-owned land, so I think that might be a best place to look at if you wanted to, have an area for people to go hiking. I mean, it's difficult terrain. I've gone up there when we were doing a study for a wind turbine. We had a Met tower that we installed at the top of that hill. So I remember going up it quite a few times, and it's quite the hike. But if someone wants to get a lot of exercise, it's a good area, and there are trails there. So that might be an area to focus on.
What about the landfill someday? The landfill.
The landfill?
Yeah, for walking trails.
I don't know, the landfill property, just because of the mere fact it was a landfill. I don't know, if there's any environmental concerns or not. I'd rather go hiking up at Granger Cliffs.
Okay. You still have a lot of dirt bikes that go up on the landfill?
Yeah, and not as many as there were, years back. In the past 10 years with the driving range, the shooting range was installed by the police department. So I think since then, which is adjacent to the landfill, I think that's kind of kept some of the dirt bikers out of there, knowing that the police are up there quite often. So it's not as bad as it used to be, but certainly we still get them up there. We've tried fencing off some of the areas where they come through, and you know, it's almost pointless. They just cut the fence and they'll come through anyhow. So it's hard to keep them out.
Yeah,
But it's gotten better. Definitely gotten better.
that's good.
It may have been just the kids who were riding the dirt bikes in that area have grown up and moved away. It may just, over the years. So.
Yeah.
And feasibility for bike paths? Do you have any particular vision for biking paths if we were to try to create that recreational opportunity in Auburn?
I haven't given that much thought of where. I know under the Complete Streets program, we try to encourage, to share the road and to use the shoulder of the road as a bike path, but it's hard to say where we could actually have bike paths in town. Nothing jumps out at me, I'll say that.
I saw on the goals and objectives list that the DPW had overseen a couple years back a feasibility study for a community center, including an inquiry of citizen demand. Was that ever performed, to your knowledge?
Of a community center?
Yeah.
What is the rest of it?
So under goal 2 in Auburn's goals, in goal 2, in the first year or two, there was to be a feasibility study for a community center, including an inquiry of citizen demand headed by the DPW town manager and town planner. But I don't know if that was ever done. Do you see what I'm looking at, Adam?
Working on it.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think of when, and now what year was that?
Maybe that was 2014, because I think that's the old document.
Community center. The only thing I could think of is whether or not that's referencing the Gleason Pond Park building.
Huh.
I think there was some discussion at some point potentially whether or not the Gleason building could have been used as a community center. So, I'm kind of just shooting at the hip. That's kind of my recollection. The town manager may recall better, but I think there was some discussions relative to the use of Gleason, because there was always discussion of what are we going to use the building for.
Yeah.
So
right.
I believe that's where that's the only thing I can think of that would have been used as a community center.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
You're welcome. Which certainly it's not going to be called, to my knowledge, called a community center, but it is a community building and
Right.
It is recreation building. So it certainly could be used for multiple purposes, I'm sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if they'll allow people to rent the space out for use. I know there's a new project in Worcester over by, there's that playground. They have a new historic building that they rent out for functions.
Sure. Oh, is that the old Federated, not the old bank that they moved over there?
Yes.
On Mill Street.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, they rent that space out for all sorts of functions.
Yeah, I would suspect we would potentially rent this out. Again, I don't want to speak for the town manager, but I can't see why we wouldn't consider that.
Yeah.
So it'll be completely ADA compliant once it's built, and it'll be completely new, and certainly has ample parking. It's going to be a very nice building. It'd be smaller venues, I'm sure, because I don't think it's going to really hold 200 people, but certainly would probably house 50 to 75 comfortably.
Yeah.
Bill,
Yes, Mark.
are you going to be adding some lights in that parking lot, especially at the entrance? It's very dark there. It's hard to find it.
That's a good question. We haven't considered that at this point, but that's something we might have to look at going forward. Our focus has been on the building itself, not really the entrance going in, but that's a very good question, Mark. We'll have to take a look at that.
It's very dark there. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry I have so many questions, but while you're here, I may as well ask.
No, absolutely.
Looking back at that same chart, the goals and objectives from Auburn, this must have been dated 2014, Adam. I'm not entirely sure. I didn't know on this copy.
Yeah, it was at least approved in 14. This might have been worked on for a couple of years prior to that. But
Okay, so maybe even before Bill was here, there was also a mention of investigating the possibility of establishing a swimming program at some determined location. And if Camp Gleason is nixed and Rotary Beach is nixed, and I don't think there'll be an indoor facility, is there any mention of how we can proceed with that plan?
Well, I think there was a study, and Adam, you may know more about it than I do, because I wasn't too involved. It was more through the town manager's office. Again, I'll say what my recollection of the study was. At the end, there was a potential donor willing to donate funds for a swimming pool. But once the study looked at what the total cost was going to be to the town, I believe it was voted down. And when I say voted down, whether or not that was by the Board of Selectmen or who voted that down, whether it was a committee, I'm not 100% sure. But I think the cost was too significant to the town long term to have the swimming pools. So I think that was looked at. I think they also looked at whether or not there was options to potentially use, other swimming pools, whether it was at Holy Cross or other locations. Right. And I don't think any of that really had any traction. So did not move forward.
It's too bad.
I think, whether or not a splash pad would be something that would be more successful than a swimming pool. Yeah,
less liability.
Less liability. You wouldn't have to have full-time lifeguards on duty. And you look at swimming pools, there is a lot of liability with them. The water can get very cloudy. We all recall that there was concerns years back with people that drowned in the pools, and they were there for days before they were even discovered because the pool was so cloudy. So I mean, there's a lot of liability with it too. But it was mainly, I think, geared towards what the cost was going to be and the cost assessment. And I think, Adam, I don't know if you recall that study. That was about 2-3 years ago. Wasn't that long ago?
Yeah, it was. That was underway when I started 2 years ago, so I really wasn't involved. Okay. I know the cost was in the millions and millions of dollars to build something. Right. Exactly how much, I don't know. I know liability has been mentioned as a high concern for any swimming location, whether it's a pool, indoor, outdoor, or a lake.
So this might be a stupid question. If liability is a concern, I wonder if passive, non-motorized boating in some sort of rental space at Rotary Beach would be feasible, if not just for picnicking, but the use of the water area. Is that something that you could foresee being feasible?
I would say, a couple of things. One is that body of water is owned by the Auburn Water District, not the town. And I think there were some discussions about that. And I don't think it was something that the water district would necessarily support. Okay. But it's not town-owned water property. I think we looked at some recreational use of Auburn Pond behind the fire station, potentially, because I know the high school currently uses it, I think, for canoes. Whether or not we've talked about, again, we've put in for grants to have a like a fountain in the middle of Auburn Pond installed, and a bridge connecting behind the fire station to the library. We've applied for grants, I think $1 million recently. I don't know if we've heard back on that one yet. And Adam, unless you recall, if that was might have been I'm not sure if that was a MassWorks grant. But those discussions, we've had discussions along those lines, and I think we're trying to promote some more use of that pond, and then trails around that pond as well. I think
Yeah.
CMRPC, Adam, is doing a study as well with trails around the pond. So that's something that I think an area that you could focus on potentially definitely for improving. It's right there in this, what I would call the center of town. I know it's not what is the center of town, but I guess up by the town hall is what people who've been here for years refer to as the center of town up in that area. But if you didn't grow up in Auburn, I grew up in Leicester and spent a lot of time in Auburn, but I've always kind of thought of that area where the fire station is and the library and the Auburn Mall. If someone had asked me where's downtown Auburn, that's what I would have thought would have been the center of town rather. Yeah, not up by the town hall. So that's a nice area, I think, where, especially with the Auburn Street reconstruction project, with all the streetscaping that we're going to be doing there, with the ornamental lighting and the benches and brick feature strips and a lot of landscaping. If we could expand on that and potentially have hiking trails around Auburn Pond, around the library, and wrap all the way around by Brotherton Road, I think that would be a great benefit as well. And a big part of that would be the bridge.
It's not wooded over there. It doesn't expand beyond the center, the actual center, does it?
You would have, so behind the fire station, what we looked at would be a pedestrian bridge over to the library. We estimated that would be about $500,000 to build that bridge. So we were applying for grants for funding for that. We would improve access from the town parking lot, which is just to the left of the fire station, and potentially have a launching area for canoes and whatnot in that area as well. And these are just kind of ideas. There's nothing solid right now. I think we apply for grants and we hope that we get them. And then we looked at potentially the fountain in the middle of the pond, more of an aesthetic value, which creates some aeration too, I think, for the pond, which would be an improvement for water quality. And then the hiking trail would come off from the library. And if you're standing with your back to the mall, looking at the library, it would come in on that right-hand side of the parking lot, and then it would then go along Brotherton Way on the other side of the guardrail. You'd have to have a small area there that you could grade for a trail. And Adam, I don't know if you can expand on that with CMRPC, where we are with that study, if you have any more information on it than that. I know they've been looking at it.
Yeah, there should have it any day now. There should be a survey going out. They've done some imagery, some mapping of what possibly can go there. So there should be something out at any point. I had a meeting with them last week, but there was their map, that what they're trying to do with their survey mapping is kind of newer technology. So there was kind of a hiccup with it, but any day we should have something.
Does anyone find it strange that the medical building is right behind there for aesthetic value? I don't know, the mall and then now the medical building.
Yeah, I mean, it's, to me, I'd love to see a revitalization project where the whole mall was, similar to and I'll call it the Blackstone Mall, I'm not sure, in Millbury, where a lot of them are outside. It's kind of a different, the Auburn Mall to me it's something that it reminds me of, from 30 years ago. I don't think that's what you would build today, but it's, it's certainly having an occupant there, whether it's medical. I know at one time we had looked at potentially the movie theater at that location, which would have been nice, but might have been more traffic. So as far as traffic wise, having Reliant there is not necessarily a bad thing. And, it's good for the mall. It supports the mall as much as it, may not have been what some people would have thought would be the best thing for the town, but it's a good thing for the mall.
And they have 25,000 patients at that facility, so it does draw a lot of people.
Wow, that's a lot. Yeah,
A lot of sick people.
It's a busy place.
absolutely.
Have you heard anything about what if they have any plans for the Sears building, Pat?
I
No,
have not. I don't know, Adam, if you've heard anything.
no, nothing. Not even any rumor, not even any rumors, nothing. I know the mall's been actively marketing it, but they haven't been forthcoming with much of anything. I know our economic development coordinator has contacted lots of businesses to try to draw them, grocery stores and the like, but with no luck at this point.
It's a big building.
Yeah, hopefully with COVID, hopefully winding down, we'll see some progress.
So I'm sorry I got kicked off, so I don't know if this was asked, but Bill, is there like a equivalent hours that you need for each type of facility or a walking trail or soccer parks, like for man hours that you would need to staff?
Boy, that's a great question. I would have to give it some thought. I mean, it's certainly, the only one I can probably answer that to would be the Pappas complex. At one time, we looked at the amount of hours it took for us to maintain Pappas, and we typically we were sending a crew of 5 people on at that complex, pretty much for an entire day. So, you know, equivalent, so it'd be one equivalent person, right? Just for Pappas alone. So if you had 5 people for one day, that would be one person 5 days a week. So that's the type of maintenance. That's why we bring on the seasonal kids every year. And when I say kids, they're usually 18 or older. So they typically, a lot of times they're college kids. So we end up with 8 to 9 people working to maintain all the fields. But Pappas alone takes up pretty much one person a week in terms of hours. So you could, you know, derive from that. There's 2 baseball fields, you know, a soccer field and a softball field. You could say, you know, each new field potentially would add, you know, 0.25 people. So every 4 fields you build is another person needed for maintenance.
And then something such as like the walking fields or the walking trails and the mowing of the South Hold land. Obviously, that's not as often, but
Right, that's
I'm just trying to think when we're looking at trying to consider and present a lot of these things, just want to make sure that it's not a burden if we were to do that, or something that we would consider.
I think the mowing of the South Hold land, I believe, takes, and I'd have to check with my foreman, but I think it's a week to mow the whole area. So as much as that takes away a person for a week in July and probably a week in mid to late September, you know, that's just more that it draws from them to maintain the fields. As far as the walking trails, you know, I haven't heard the guys complain too much about it in terms of how much maintenance the walking trails are. So I don't think those are as much, because you're not mowing the grass once a week on a walking trail. So the trails probably aren't as much maintenance as a field would be, as a ball field. And then in terms of cost, I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry.
In terms of cost, one of the things to keep in mind that's a significant cost to the town are the synthetic fields, so the artificial turf fields. You know, that's a major cost annually. That as these fields get to a point where they need to be replaced. I know the football field at the high school was just done last year in the track, and you know, that was a significant cost. But they also have the all-purpose field and the baseball field that are turf fields. And you know, if you figure every roughly 15 years, football field may not last as long, but a baseball field, you might get more than 15 years that you have to replace these fields. That gets quite costly too, because Pappas has 2 artificial turf fields. The soccer field and the Kamasi field are both artificial turf. And then the middle school's new field in the back is artificial turf. They're great. People love playing on those fields, and I don't blame them. As a kid, I would have loved to play on them as well. As far as maintenance, there are some benefits. The great thing about them is it can rain out and you can get right on that field. Unlike, a grass field, if it rains out, you're not playing. It's going to be a mud hole. End of the winter, the grass fields, you have to wait for them to get released because they're just too wet. You can't play on the grass fields. The turf fields, you can get right on those turf fields. So that's the benefit. But then obviously, there's a cost to that benefit, and they are more, I think in the long run, they're obviously more expensive, and there's a maintenance cost. Over time, the town is going to realize, an annual cost of what that would be, and it's not, it's pretty significant. Once we get into the rotation of replacing all those fields, it's a pretty significant cost for the town.
I was going to ask previously, just to piggyback on that point, how much do you call upon volunteers to assist with either trail maintenance or even field maintenance? Do you call upon regular non-seasonal volunteers?
We don't get a lot of volunteers. I would say once or twice a year we will get volunteers to help with, they'll call us, what do you have for projects? And I can't remember the name of them. I apologize. There's one in particular, and I don't want to, I have it in my head, but I don't want to misquote their name, so I don't want to say what it is, the organization. They come out. Adam, is it the Life Song Church? Would you know what it is?
It could be, but I'm not sure.
I think that's their name, and they volunteer once a year. They'll call, and typically what we ask them to do is help us with the mulch on the veterans parks because that's so labor intensive. Huh. And they've done a great job, and they've been very, very helpful and supportive. It's been excellent. But we don't get a lot of people calling to volunteer to do a lot.
Is that something of interest, or is that almost too worrisome to coordinate that?
What's that?
Is that something of interest? Is that something that would be useful or not?
Well, I think it's a lot of work. I mean, people, it's a lot of time. It's hard for, we get groups that will offer to volunteer. The Cub Scouts will look for a project for usually the younger kids. And we'll usually give them a small project, because it's really not something that they can do major projects. One of the things I would love to see the town do, would be like adopt an island type program. I think that would be a great thing for landscaping and maintaining some of the islands in town, just because there's so much for us to maintain. And to have the crew just keep up with the grass and the weeds, it itself is hard. So as we add these landscape areas, it becomes more work. So that type of program, adopt an island, or adopt a road. It would be great to see businesses participate in that type of work. We do have the spring cleanup. I think the Chamber of Commerce does every other year. That's a great event. We get a lot of participation with volunteers at that event. That's typically about, I think, 3 or 4 hours every other year. So it's it's something where they pick up a tremendous amount of trash. But going forward, even, we thought on Earth Day or somewhere right on Earth Day, if we could do more with spring cleanups is something that we as the DPW, we're actually looking to move forward with last year. Over and above the Chamber's cleanup, we were going to try to have an annual cleanup around Earth Day. But with COVID, obviously last year, we're not able to do that. And I'm not sure if we're going to be able to do that this year either. So, but we're actually meeting towards the end of January to discuss the spring cleanup to see if that's something that's going to be feasible this year, whether or not it should be moved back later in the year.
Thank you.
But in terms of maintaining our fields and parks, I mean, it's a huge undertaking. I don't think people have to volunteer to do that type of work. I should say the Little League does help with maintenance. So I don't want to say nobody does. Certainly Little League will provide some labor towards maintaining the parks as well. So they'll line the field. I don't know if they've actually done any mowing, but they have funds that they've contributed to improve the fields. Franklin Park a couple of years ago, the Little League donated, I want to say, thousands of dollars just to redo Franklin Field completely. So the Little League have done a lot that way. You know, it's a larger program. I think softball is much smaller, so I don't think they have the ability to be able to do projects like that.
Yeah. Greater Worcester Land Trust, do they get involved?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay.
No.
Huh. Any other questions, comments?
Bill, thank you for joining today. Certainly great to hear your thoughts and input, and will help us better present what we're working towards here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. And if you have any questions, that you think of later, feel free to give me a call, or I'd be happy to come back again.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Thanks.
Okay, what do we have remaining on the agenda here? I mean, we've discussed the survey. There were a couple of things that you added in and completed. Adam, did you want to talk about what you've done?
Sure. So I sent out the link to what I've been able to put together so far. It's definitely not the final product, but the link I sent you, I think you can all take the survey kind of, it's kind of a practice now to see how well it works. That if you can all do that, that'll be very helpful. If there are any questions I missed or think should be improved upon, of course I'd be happy to add them or tweak whatever the wording is. There's about 20 questions I think I counted. I didn't number them, but I might go back and number them just kind of at least for our own purposes. Dominic, I tried to do your quadrant map as best as possible with the way it was laid out in one of the questions. It kind of made sense to me to have it divided the way the highways divide the town.
Sure. Yeah, it makes sense. My only concern is that most people, even if they're from Auburn, wouldn't be able to identify the key areas without demarcating what belongs in which quadrant. The fire station is here. And so I had labels. I don't know if it's possible to put a little note or legend. I don't know if that's something that could be done.
Yeah,
I don't trust people would recognize what they're looking at. I don't know.
Yeah, I can try to play around with it. And I'll do what I can with Google Docs, but being a kind of a free program, it's a little limiting, unfortunately. But I'll try to add something in there to kind of identify. A legend would, yeah, you're right. A legend would definitely be helpful.
But it looks great, yeah.
If you have any comments, questions on this, I'm going to pass this around to some of the people in town hall for them to kind of give it a once through, see what they think. Same with the town manager. I'll ask her to see if she can take 5 minutes and look at it.
You didn't change this from the last iteration that you sent last week, right?
I did not. I have not had a chance to make any more changes.
I have it's sort of the elephant in the room, just where my head is at. There's no mention of swimming as a recreational opportunity. Are we nixing that language in the survey completely? Since in the objectives, it looks like swimming is a no-go. in the town. Is that something we want to revisit as a town in surveying the public, or do we want to just exclude that from the survey?
I mean, I can include something. I'm honestly not sure if with the study that was done 2 years ago, how much more we'll get from that, but we can certainly include it. Maybe a couple of different options like the splash pad or you know, some kind of kayak launch or something like that.
Yeah. I know you had included in this copy of the survey, and when I revisited it, I thought, now question number, I'm gonna have to pull it back up, but there was one question about what people would be willing to do as far as zoning decisions are concerned in order to keep open spaces thriving. I thought it was kind of a confusing question. I didn't think it was worthwhile to include in the survey. I don't know if you feel the same way or if anyone has any comments on that.
I did add zoning in there only because that's how we determine how the land itself is used. We do have an open space bylaw that's for residential development. I don't know how often it was used. I've only come across one development it was used for, so I was kind of just thinking about how to preserve what open space there is, or how to you know, create green space. Just kind of in brainstorming and trying to come up with something the town could do. Same around like the climate change and how what we can do to further that. And I thought that open space and zoning and climate change kind of ties into each other.
What is the question prior to the one that we're looking at in the middle of the screen here? Is there another one right before that?
To preserve open space, what actions would, that's a typo, would support the town undertake? So obviously my language is not perfect right now. It's a rough draft, but just what to preserve open space, what actions would you support? So zoning or conservation restrictions, the Community Preservation Act, a town purchase land like the 61B or the Chapter 61 land, that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'd like to hear from everyone else, but I think these two questions to the general public might cause them to scratch their heads a little bit. It doesn't seem to be as accessible to a common person. Maybe I'm just too common myself, but I don't know if they have access to the information that would enable them to really pick one or more of these options and really speak to the open space needs in Auburn. Does anyone else want to speak to this?
So I think what you're saying, for many people, if you're for preserving, you're probably going to check all these things. So it's not going to yield any benefits. And if you're for development, you might be a little bit more hesitant. But again, I think you're going to get a section of people that are just going to check all of them and maybe the other as well and have some ideas. So I don't know if it's going to yield us any new information.
Right. It's more for you to go through, Adam, and tabulate.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Well, and again, depending on each one of these comes with their own issues anyway, and depending on the lands, and we're going to have to get specific on certain areas and
Right.
other boards be involved in that. So I think everyone would be notified at that point if something were to take place or need action. If we wanted to adopt the Community Preservation Act, I think that's got to go townwide, right?
Any of these would be townwide town meeting issues. For planning purposes, it's kind of get a pulse of the town, what people might be open to. The Community Preservation Act, that is a tax, that is an increased tax, but there's also a state funded match for certain projects. That's, I think, like it's about 100 towns have adopted the Community Preservation Act. Zoning always goes through town meeting, and I've been trying to work to bring forward some zoning changes that town meetings. COVID kind of put a damper on some of them from last past year, but that may come up in the future. Conservation restrictions, it's kind of a Conservation Commission question, but there are always things that come up in planning.
So yeah, I think for a townwide survey, this might be a little too much, and even for myself, I'd have to research each one of those before I'd say, yes, I want to do that.
Right, I'd want to Google every single one.
But no, most people wouldn't, and that's something we need to consider. Is we need to make sure that we're not making them go cross-eyed trying to get their thoughts across. But again, like I'm all for an open-ended. What types of actions would you be okay with for these? To preserve land or that type of stuff, and maybe those people that do know would fill in any of those options, and that might yield better results than what you get with just checking in a box.
Agreed.
I wonder if people would be willing to, when we pay our taxes, take like certain like $5 or $10 and put into a special account, so like a big parcel of land comes for sale, we have money, aside for. I'm always thinking of the Kelly Farm. If they ever went to sale, big piece of land up there.
So yeah, those are things that definitely would have to go through town meeting for, and I think you're gonna, split the people. $5 or $10 doesn't sound like a lot, but when you couple that with a, 2% or 1.8% increase, I think that's gonna definitely drum up some opposition.
I'm not thinking about adding. I'm thinking just take $5 from our regular tax bill and put it towards that.
Yeah, I'm the wrong person to be asking about the financing. That's not my. It's not really my department.
I think people would answer that.
That's kind of like the Community Preservation Act. Certain funds are designated specifically for in the CPA open space or housing. Along if those funds are used, it's matched by state funds, depending if you fit the certain criteria. But I'm not sure what options they have in the finance department to do that kind of thing.
I think Scott, and correct me if I'm wrong, if it was one of you, Scott Wren had suggested using language like if money was no issue, or if money was not a problem, what would you like to see? Does that make sense to insert that kind of language here so that people aren't too concerned about the taxes going up at this stage?
Yeah, I can add that to see what people's, what their kind of wishes are.
And is there some note, Adam, about being able to select more than one option? Sometimes people only select their favorite and they don't know that they can select multiple. I don't know if it's at the top, or if you want to insert a reminder that you can select more than one. Sometimes in a survey, it's helpful to remind people of that option.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find something like that, or I'll let them know at the beginning.
So not trying to complicate your work, but is there a way we can rank them into 1 through 5 and, that type of situation? Because, I might be in favor of something, but it's a low favorability.
For which question?
I'm just saying, like, if you're going to say multiple questions, like anything that you could use for multiple, like in order of preference, can we do like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that type of thing?
I can see what the program will let me do.
Yeah, I'm not trying to complicate it, but I'm just thinking if you're going to have multiples, it's if you can get them in order to yield benefits, that's probably better.
I'll see what I can do. I expect to be working on this in the morning or in the afternoon tomorrow. So if you have anything more on this, please let me know. I'll send this out again once I polish up the language a bit and add and remove some questions.
Great. And you want us to try to take it before we get in touch with you with feedback and just see if there are any other kinks that we can pick up on?
Why don't you let me clean it up first and make these changes, and then you guys can take it and we'll try a more polished version.
Sounds good.
And hopefully I can get this, I'll work on it tomorrow and get it out to you for the weekend.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Hopefully you enjoy making surveys. You've done a lot.
Well, it's a good way to spend some time. It makes the time go by.
Are you sick in bed, Adam?
No,
Oh, okay.
I am working from home today, so working from home a couple days a week.
Nice.
And this is the only quiet spot.
You have kids, Adam?
No, my parents are downstairs and I'm upstairs, so.
Nice. Were there any items left on the agenda that we needed to discuss today? Or should we, it's 6:50, so I think we only have a couple more minutes remaining.
So I don't really have anything else. I left some of these items on here, just kind of carry over from the previous meetings. We can kind of keep them on and touch upon them as we go along. The biomap habitats, those really haven't changed. But we'll get into some of the other stuff. I think once the survey's done, I'll start filing you some more information.
Okay. All right, so should I, now I'm sorry, I'm still new to the parliamentary procedure. Do I make a motion to end the meeting?
I'll make a motion to end the meeting.
A second?
All right, we have a second. No one's
All in
opposed.
favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a good night.
You too.
Bye-bye.